Well, hello, and welcome to Death Cafe with me, your Latinx bruja, Pastel Supernova. This is where I do my part to normalize heart-led conversations about death, dying, and loss. I'll be sharing personal journeys and conversing with some pretty insightful minds on everything to do with the inevitable. This is episode 4, and in it I share what has been coming up for me lately as a death doula in training and also as a simple human. And with shares that come up from listeners, we talk about altars, rituals, the dying process, and also a very cool story about a listener who actually died. Today is a special day. Today on this Death Cafe, I'd like to talk about the season that we're in, the season of change. They say the veil is the thinnest around this time. They say lots of things, that the dead are close, but I think the dead are always close. The dead are always here, just like the living. Today, I am sharing a little bit about how to honor the dead. We've just passed Halloween and we've entered the week of celebrating Dia de los Muertos, which is honoring the dead. And as I continue in towards the last chapter of my death doula training, a lot of things have been simmering and shifting inside me, and I've been processing what death, dying, and loss really mean in a very different way. So today I want to talk a little bit more about ritual, because when things are difficult for me, I turn to ritual and spiritual practice to help myself take time to reflect and to get to the roots of what I find unsettling. A while ago, I learned about the actual process of dying. And something that I found very magical about it was that the process of dying naturally is very much like closing out a ritual in practice, in magical practice. So when a ritual is started in my way of practicing, there is a cleansing ceremony. So the area is swept, physically cleansed, spiritually cleansed, energetically cleansed. There is then a time of grounding and then setting the space up for ritual. Once that is set up, we call in the elements or the spirits, and we call them in by direction, usually starting in the east. We go south, we go west, and we go north. And every time we switch directions, we call in these elements and these spirits with reverence. And then finally, we call in spirit, creator, a specific deity, if you so wish. And then you create your ritual. It usually involves some form of ceremonial energy raising, like dancing, singing, clapping. Depends on your space and what you're physically able to do, but you raise the energy and then you set your intention and you create that ritual. And then you might have some time of just living in that space, letting it soak in. You might journal. There is a time of just enjoying the magic that you've been creating. And then when it's all done, you thank spirit. And then just like the dying process, we release this energy and this circle from earth to water to fire and to air. And that is how the natural dying process goes. We lose the elements of our earth our vitality starts to fade, our cheeks indent, we lose our grip strength, the things that keep us kind of tactile here start to fade away. We might feel literally ungrounded, a little bit forgetful. And then we lose the element of water. So just think of all of the different ways we have bodily fluid and how they help us function. And those things start to dim as well. We also lose the sense of our taste and our cognitive function, our hearing. We get dry tongue, literally papery, peely skin, things like chewing become a little bit difficult. Then the fire fades, which is peripheral vision, the depth of our vision, temperatures change, there's agitation. And then finally, the air fades. And as we release the air, just as we release the elements of air in a magical circle, the breath changes. In a ritual, you might notice that the air literally changes temperature as the magic leaves. It cools off, just like it would in our body. We might have some breathing changes. There's a lot to do with how we intake our air in the dying process that starts to shut down. And our hearing is the last thing that leaves naturally. And as much as I found that was very powerful because I had learned about it in one very beautiful ceremonial way to understand that our bodies fade in that same order, it was powerful because it just made me realize, oh wow, this life is really magical. And seeing it out takes a certain amount of maturity, because if you recognize the signs, then you recognize the signs, and you have to deal with that, and that might bring on fear. And it could also be enlightening. Who knows? I'll know when I get there, just as much as everybody else goes through this. I guess they know how they feel when they get there. But in this time of honoring the dead, I have a shrine for my family and the pets I have lost, great friends that have gone to the other side, and I burn incense for them, and I have a special spray to cleanse. I surround them with dried flowers that I keep I keep them there basically until I feel like they want to be switched out. But in that time, I will spray them with holy water or Florida water or ceremonial tobacco spray, something to keep it smelling nice. I offer a little shot of booze, usually rum or tequila, and I also offer water that I switch out every week. And in this shrine for my dead, I have pictures, if I have them, or I write down their names, and any kind of trinket or ceremonial symbol that I know would be important to them, I put up as well. So I identify as a witch, but my family was Catholic, very Catholic. So I have a lot of little saints kind of propped up where my grandparents and my mother is kind of their area is. I have the family separated between maternal and paternal family lineage. And I just decorate them with things that I think they would like. So I offer them gifts, essentially. On Halloween, I laid out an altar in my living room area with a pumpkin, gourds, and turnips are well known for how long they stay looking beautiful in their colorful and weird ways. And I surrounded it with oranges and orange peels and dried sunflower petals along with blue flowers. So it's very beautiful, it's very ornate. And on top of the gourd, I put a candle and I covered it with an oil that is celebrating Santa Muerte. So I have spoken about her before, but imagine the Grim Reaper in female form. She is honored in Mexico, but a lot of Latin Americans honor her. I mean, I think she's grown in popularity over the last few years, but the scent is very earthy and organic. I wouldn't call it beautiful, but very much like death. It's distinct, very organic. It reminds me of dried leaves a little bit. Also musky and beautiful. So I poured it all over the candle and I lit the candle and I placed a nice shot of tequila with a skull shot glass on there, and I lit it and it felt good. It felt fine. I sprinkled it with cinnamon for abundance and just to remind my friends, my ancestors, and my animals that I love them. But something that was interesting happened in that the first day that I did it on Halloween, it felt good. And the next day I relit the candle, and I will continue relighting this candle or add new ones as they burn down until November 6th. And yesterday, in the middle of the day, I was compelled to sit in front of it and light another candle and say the names of everybody that I could think of that have passed. And great emotion kept rushing up. And, I kind of got to crying the names out and just sat there. And I wasn't sad. In Spanish, we call this emoción, which is just emotion. But when someone gets emoción, a rush of it, usually spews out in tears and or laughter. Kind of like an ugly cry laugh, and it doesn't symbolize happiness or sadness per se, just intense love. So that was happening, and I just thought I would share today about the power of altars and rituals. I talk about this because lately, through my training, I've been really letting things kind of settle in, and death came to me in an interesting way in a dream where I was standing in front of a lioness and we were outside. It was warm. It was probably her environment. And she was eating this big raw piece of meat. And I think I threw her one, and as she was chewing, all the blood was all over her face, like how lions eat. And she just looked at me, and I was really taken aback by how close we were to each other, her beauty, her magnificence, and also her power, and that she could take me next if she wanted to. I didn't feel in danger, but I definitely felt very respectful of her. And that's exactly how I've been feeling about death lately, just really understanding, or maybe getting closer to understanding the power of it and how it is the great equalizer. And now I have to pause because thinking of that dream is still a bit of a sweaty armpit ordeal. Some people have been listening to my episodes, and so I'm getting listeners writing in, sharing how their fear of death is very, very powerful and prominent in their lives. And, at first I was like, oh, yeah, no, really, it's interesting because, like, I can talk about death all day long. But the more I talk about it, the more I'm really seeing how much it is to be respected. All right, I've got a message here.
I hear you about it being an equalizer, and I kind of appreciate and respect that we get to have a richer life, knowing that death is equally a part of our existence.
Yeah, thank you. It's a bit nuts. Today I'm feeling more in touch with it, perhaps because I'm in the middle of this multi-day ritual honoring the dead. So I do feel that, when you pray to your people, they show up. Some people can't feel it. I very much feel the difference, the shift in the air. It doesn't scare me, but there's something about it that pulls me to the present. And you know, I honor that. It makes me take time to reflect on, oh, okay, who's here? Should I be doing something specific for you? For example, if I ever do a ritual and I haven't put out a shot of strong liquor for my mother, there will be knocking on the walls, things fall off the walls. My friends have been around to see it. And it's not scary like a poltergeist, but it is very real. And so I pay attention. Not everybody in my lineage is that intense, but I do definitely hold a little bit more stillness to see if anybody else kind of comes into my train of thought to ask for a gift. I'm happy to give it, but I listen for it.
We all are dead one day at one time, and we are all are alive at some day at some time. So how much we are alive and how much we are dead, it depends on us. And being alive with the body but dead inside, and dead with the body and alive with your spirit, it's something, yeah, it's just a paradox. I don't know if you guys could get it. So death is just a door for me. It's nothing special or nothing big, as you know, in the West people see that. So it's just a doorway to another side. That's it.
100%. And I'm with you there, Disco Daddy. But in the same way that it is nothing big, I could say the same. It's not that it's bigger than life. It is they are equal parts, and it is a phase. But this body that we hold, this body that I am in, I definitely don't look forward to leaving it. Just this week, it's been really, really sitting with me about how much I don't want to leave it. I have been a physical person all my life, able-bodied, of sound mind. I've been blessed and healthy. But this week I was training to work in a hospice, and we were being taught how to help people shift their bodies up, learning how to roll people over, a simple rollover. It hadn't occurred to me that somebody might be too weak to roll over as they're dying. This is something that I know people do all the time. Logically, it happens. Nurses and doctors do it every day. Caregivers do it every day. But I hadn't been faced with it. And just coming from my experience where I've been able to dance and jump on people and, lift people up over my heads, like this is something that comes very naturally to me. The reality hit, and it hit hard. Not gonna lie, I had so many emotions coming up about it. And so in the same way that, yes, I agree with you, I also see life as part of the soul's journey. It's one that matters to me more and more as I learn more about death. I am learning how to appreciate life in a different way.
Hey, Pastel, it's Cam. Hope you're doing well. I personally love the topic of death. I'm not afraid of death one bit because I know that I cannot die. Yes, this body of mine will not last, nor will my brain. However, my spirit is eternal. And I've been practicing this for at least 5 years as far as living my non-physical self in this body. And this is the reason why I'm not afraid of death. And I love the topic. And it's a shame that not many people talk about it. It should be talked about everywhere, as far as I'm concerned, because it's such a major part or aspect of our lives.
Thanks for your share, Kim. This is exactly why I'm holding the Death Cafe. Spiritually, like you, I have always felt like this is just a part of it. I mean, I know because I see spirits. I come from a line of healers. This week has been a different process for me. This week, like I hear my body speaking, my soul I speak to a lot, but this wonderful meat suit that I have has feelings too. And it's saying, I'm gonna miss you. And so I've been almost talking to my body as a separate entity and being like, oh shit. Sometimes I think that just settling into the reality of it is also part of the human experience. You know, this process I'm going through, I don't think is ignorance. I study death intensely. I'm not ashamed of it. I am sharing it because I think a lot of people feel this way. It's definitely something that I'm not looking to live in and dwell in and boohoo cry about. But if I do boohoo cry about it, I'm going to let it out. I have no fear moving back sometimes and forward other times and back again a little bit and forward because I am a human. I am just feeling this way this week, but some people feel this way all the time.
But as for me, I no longer fear death, um, because I know what this life is. Like all, growing up, I heard this. What's the meaning of life? What's the mean? I understand now what the meaning of life is. I know why I'm here, and I know that there is a life after this one, and that's about all I can say because the rest of it would be a trigger for some people. So anyway, that's how I feel. But it's a great topic. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like Disco Daddy hit the nail on the head. He knows, and I'm assuming that he is from the East. And the very problem of being from the West is that it is not talked about. So most people are kept in the dark about death and what it's all about. And if we talked about it a lot more, like we're doing here, and I appreciate Pastel for you having this avenue, we may learn from each other, and that's a great thing. But in the West, my view of it is, instead of teaching us about death and spiritualism and who are we at the very core, they keep those things away from people, and it's to keep people in fear. Because if you knew you were eternal and you cannot die, what do you have to fear? Like nothing. Uh, and if we all were to live as our true selves, as souls, this would be a way better world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think well, that's why people, give affirmations and encourage everybody to really find out who they truly are and what they really want to say beyond any programming and teachings of their families and their circles, and to really be truthful to themselves and to share that, because that's where your magic is. When we think about how wonderful life is, I think we have to think about how wonderful death might be able to be.
I totally agree. I think the magic is in the present moment. And again, most people are way in their head as far as the past and the future, and they're not being present or mindful. And they have a case of mistaken identity. because they're living through their finite vehicle instead of, you know, stepping in their soul boots as eternal beings of light.
Disco Daddy,
Yeah.
would you like to introduce yourself to the world, please?
Yeah, well, that's my pseudonym here in stereo,
Yes.
Disco Daddy, and my avatar is a mix of, cowboy with the, stash of Wolverine, because I am a bit like him, and I am difficult to kill, and even in 4 accidents, I died actually medically, and then I came back, and that's why I could tell you also that I realized that I existed without the body. That's also
Oh,
one of the
wow.
things. Yeah, I got a bad accident in Switzerland and I died actually medically. So they revived me for 5 minutes. I was dead. So then, the paramedics, they told me they revived me with certain shocks and all that. And it wasn't really bad. It was really peaceful. And I didn't feel any pain. I didn't feel anything at all. No God, no angel. And there was nothing at all. It was just a void and peaceful, extremely peaceful. So I have done from my childhood some spiritual practices as well, and the death was the biggest topic that you have to work on it when you do some yogic practices and yogic kriyas. You have to accept the death on every single moment, every single day that's in front of you. And even you go to cremation ground where the dead bodies are burnt there and cremated there, and you go there to meditate, to realize that the end of the life is always just one breath away in front of you.
I have,
Yeah,
okay, so can we go back to when you died? Do you remember that time? Like, did you have sensations?
yeah.
Could you see anything?
Well, when I died in Switzerland, that experience I clearly remember. I can never forget it. They say that 5 minutes have passed. For me, it was like maybe 5 seconds. And the time there, the time there is different than this plane. And another thing is that you don't feel any pain. You feel nothing at all. You feel really light, and you feel it was my experience. Other people see other things, so that was my experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So you feel, I felt really light. I felt painless, and I was like literally blank and zero and mentally silent in my mind and present. And then for me it was like a 5 seconds, and for in this world people said me it was around 5 minutes. So that was the experience.
Were you able to see?
Yeah,
What
I
did you?
could hear that somebody is reviving my body somewhere, and but it doesn't feel it is your body. It feels like it is somebody else's body. And I felt that they are reviving my body, and I was really comfortable with that. I had nothing, no emotion, no thought, nothing at all, and I was in a void.
Right. That's pretty beautiful. That's often what I hear, that the reason we come to this physical plane is to experience the sensations, because we don't get that in other existences, on the other side.
I have, first time I read about the concept about multiverses, I read it in Yoga Vashishta Ramayan. It's an ancient scripture about, yogic philosophy or yogic things.
Mhm.
And there I read about, the concept about multiverses. And then after many years, after I think 15, 20 years, I saw that in, Marvel Universe and all these Western science fictions and all that. And the thing is, there I read it as even we have various versions of us in various worlds, in multiple universes, that we exist in many forms and in many worlds altogether. And we are sometimes interconnected with each other. And if one side if going good, another side is going bad. If one
Yeah.
side is going into pleasure, the other side is going into pain. And there is a story in that scripture. Princess, she loses her husband, and she's deeply in love with him, and then she wants to revive him somehow to rejuvenate him from the death. But the sages, they say that that was his time, and he has finished his time in this world, and he cannot come back. So then she does penance. It's called, deep meditation or some sadhana or
Yeah.
deep practices, where you could connect with those entities who are away from birth and deaths like humans. So
Yeah.
there is divine entity called Saraswati. She's goddess of knowledge. So she connects her consciousness with the goddess of knowledge, Saraswati, and she asks her that, can you revive my husband? And before doing that, so
Right.
then after that, the Saraswati shows her that, look at that, your husband is one world, he is alive. In another world, he is doing something else. In another world, he has left you. And in another world, there are various versions of him, and in this version, in this world, he has to die. If you would awake him, somebody, one of his version, sorry for the noises, and
No problem.
and so she says him that if this version would become alive, somebody else would lose, one of your other version would lose the other side of him in another world. So would
Right.
you like that? Because if you want to talk with your husband spirit and his energy, he is still with you, he is still around you, because he also loves you, and you can connect with him, and you could communicate with him. I could give you that power. So then she gave up that desire.
I have a very kind of basic experience of a multiverse, which was something that I've always, like, to me, time has never really been linear. In my
Yes.
spiritual practice, it's understood and talked about a lot. But when my mother died, she was supposed to come to visit me. I lived in a different city, and something hit me in my stomach. Like, she called to me, so I called my brother and asked him to look in on her, and we found out that she had passed at home. I then, of course, had many, many dreams about it, and it didn't feel fair to call her back, but I really did wish that I could say goodbye. And so I started to get dreams where I was in a different type of existence, and I was there with my mother, and it was her, and I knew she was my mother, and we'd be playing out a scene. Uh, for example, one of the dreams was me in the living room and her in the kitchen, and she realized she needed to get some groceries. And I suddenly knew that as soon as she walked out the door, there wouldn't be her coming back in with groceries. I knew she was going, and this voice would kind of come through the dream over top of it, almost like a voice of God, just saying, time isn't linear. And it would snap me into a lucidity where I would go and I would then just say goodbye to her, and I would hug her and hold her and tell her she's beautiful and just tell her things that I wanted her to know. And for many, many nights, I had dreams of different existences. And as soon as that voice would kind of blast over the dream, I then had the ability to say goodbye to her in different existences and different lifetimes. And so I felt like I was traveling through the multiverse, taking the opportunity wherever it came to be able to hold her and to really release some things that I wanted to make sure she knew.
Well, sometime when you leave your body, your mother or anyone, they stay around, for certain times, because when we think about someone a lot, we are sending a frequency to them.
Yeah.
We are dialing unknowingly to them, and then for them it's difficult to leave, unless if they have some a big desire, or they have their attention is somewhere else and they want to pass as soon as possible. But most of the time when people really miss them, it takes some time for them to move away from it, and they stay in a different kind of plane.
Which, drives us back to there is no reason to fear except lots of reason to talk and to share. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you and welcome as well. And take care.
And that's it. Thank you for listening. If you want to join in on the live recording, find me on the Stereo platform every Sunday. You can find me online at Pastel Supernova, or if you want to tune in only to my death doula related work, catch me on IG at Death Doula Pastel. I'd love to hear from you, so please email your stories and questions for discussions to info@pastelsupernova.com. Until next time, and I wish you blessings and respect.